Hey everybody, Chris Johnson with Monday Morning. The market just closed, which makes it official. Nvidia just generated a bullish signal. It's only seen 36 times over the last 5 years. I'm going to break down that signal as well as the historical results, which suggests the stock should rally about 20% over the next month. And I'm going to share with you the way that I am trading this for some fast profits. Stick with me 5 or 10 minutes and you'll be a better investor for it. Let's go. All right, let's jump right into this Nvidia signal. First of all, talking about what happened in the headlines. We saw a lot of headlines about China, the Middle East, and corporate spending towards AI today. They were all bullish in favor of Nvidia. Now, investors have been kind of uneasy, let's call it, about Nvidia stock over the last month or so because it's traded in a range. Even some news outlets pointing out that it was starting to roll over at a critical level, right around that 140, 150 price point. But today's headlines got investors excited, so much so that we saw a volatility incident. And what I'm referring to is a break above the Bollinger Band. Now, you've seen this chart with me pretty often, but I've made the pink lines a little bit heavier right now. Those are what we refer to as Bollinger Bands. They were invented by a guy named John Bollinger. And what they do is they basically gauge volatility for a stock, whether a stock's about to become more volatile when it breaks above or below those Bollinger Bands, or if there's a quiet period for a stock. We've seen both within the last week. If you notice, the bands have gotten tighter. There's usually a natural distribution, if you will, of a stock's price, and it keeps those bands at a certain range or so. And when they start to tighten up, it tells you that the market's either getting nervous or the stock is getting compressed. Now, the good part of this is when it breaks above or below that Bollinger Band, it's an indication of which way the stock is going to make its next large move, because now investors come off of the sidelines and they follow that trail of money into the stock. I mentioned we had an indication of this, a top Bollinger Band break right after the company's earnings, and the resulting rally was about 90% over the following 30 days. That is about average for these returns. I'm going to point out a couple of other things on this chart very quickly, and that is that 50-day moving average is trending higher, which means Nvidia's backdrop, their trend is friendly right now. But more importantly, look at this. I talked about the death cross 3 or 4 months ago, which you can see right here. That's when the 50-day moving average crosses below the 200-day moving average, and it forecasts lower prices for the stock as long as that 50-day continues lower. Usually it's about a 3 to 6 month period. In this case, we saw that 50-day moving average turn higher, and now you're about to have the reverse. And by the way, the stock lost about 26% after we had that death cross. Now you've got the reverse, which is a golden cross. This is bullish for not only Nvidia, but the NASDAQ 100, any other stock that sees a bullish golden cross. It tells you that momentum is now gaining speed, in this case to the upside. Now, the secret of this signal is that we just had this today, which is that break above that top Bollinger Band. And there is a history of this that I pulled up, did a quick study using the database, and this is going back just 5 years on Nvidia, because you could look back 20 or you could look back 25 years on a company, but I'm more interested in a recency effect of signals like this, especially with Nvidia, because AI has now been the driving factor for Nvidia, and it's got a higher profile than ever. So the last 5 years are typically going to show different signals than the 5 or 10 years previous. What you see when we pull this up is that over the next 30 days, on average, just on average, whether it breaks and follows through or not, you've got an 8% rally in the stock over the next 30 days. That is healthy for any company, any index, etc. But when you break this down and start to look at the winning and the losing, 58% of the time, so better than average, not as much as we are here where you've got 2/3, and we'll talk about that, but you're up 19.6%. Now, that last rally that we saw in Nvidia that I pulled back up in May, that was right about 19.8%. That's coincidence. Those averages don't mean you're going to see it stick it like a gymnast landing off of the pommel horse. No, this is a situation where these are averages and they play out like averages. But you'll note that we see right here in the middle, 67% of the time after 20 days, the stock is up 15.7. That's double of what we saw on that 30-day. So look for this signal to follow through to the upside a day or two, and when it does, it should be a lights out signal. As with anything, there is another side to this trade, potential side. Everything doesn't come up and say 100% winners. I'll definitely take 67%. And by the way, 36 signals that you've had in the last 5 years, and that's over 1,255 trading days, which comes out to about 3% of the time. Usually you get around 1 to 2%. NVIDIA's a little different because it has been more volatile. So 3% gives us a nice robust view of what the company might do here. But when it does lose, 43% of the time, the stock drops 14.3%. That's what the bears, or maybe the bulls, even need to worry about here if we see a quick reversal in the market. But there's other good news out there. Seasonality is getting ready to start playing into the market's hands. We've got earnings season that's going to kick off in about 2 weeks, and the first 2 to 3 weeks of July are typically very bullish. I've talked about seasonality a lot on moneymorning.com, and this exact fact that typically as we move into earnings season, you'll see a lot of investors coming off the sidelines and going more bullish, adding stocks to the portfolio, and then about the third week or so in July, when we get all those big Mag 7 earnings out of the way, and you're not going to see numbers from Nvidia until August, but when we get those big earnings out of the way, you're going to see a lull in the market, and that heads us right into August, which is typically one of the worst months along with September. So I love the fact that this signal is happening right now. It gives us a nice run up into that Mag 7 earnings when a lot of investors are going to start feeling that fear of missing out. Right now, when I look at Nvidia at $150, this stock, if you base it off of that 20, just going off of that 20%, you've got an indication that we could see $175 to $180 off of Nvidia over the next 20 to 30 days or so. Now, let's look at a couple of other things here in the chart, because I always like to go through some of the details so you'll understand exactly what I will watch in terms of how to trade this. How to trade it is pretty simple. Based on these technicals right now, you look at that 50-day and that golden crossover, or that golden cross that's going to happen, and you say, well, that 67% over 20 days should start to favor us a little bit more because we've got momentum that is building. I still watch this $150 price level. That is the point where if for some reason something were to go wrong, I would be getting out of Nvidia, because it tells me that you're going to see a reversal and probably right back down to that $130 level. Now, back when we talked about that death cross, I said I wanted to buy the stock at $80 and people thought I was crazy, but I missed it. Call it a regret, because I didn't pull the trigger on adding more. I waited until the 50-day moving average turned around and started favoring me as a trend. But at this point, I will look for that 150 to turn into a 160 very quickly. And at that point, I think you have to know that the market is going to continue to load up on Nvidia, especially as we're seeing some of the Mag 7 stocks really start to be tepid. You're going to find investors are going to favor names like Microsoft, which has just hit all-time highs. And maybe Apple is a value deal, but beware there. Tesla is a little bit on a bumpy road here, especially with the robo-taxi rollout that we saw, and a lot of pressure from other possible robo-taxi companies. But once we hit that 160, this is going to be a reverse waterfall, if you will, and I think we shoot our way up to that $175 target within that 30 trading day period. Now, how do I trade this? I've already mentioned to you that I am long Nvidia, and I absolutely am, even though I actually added some hedges when we had that death cross that pointed out, but have since been adding to. I prefer to hold the stock and use longer-term options to leverage that. That's right. I'll start to look at options not that expire today or tomorrow, which you can do 0-day to expiration options on Nvidia, but instead I choose to buy options that are 3 and 4 months out. Give myself time for this trend to play out and really hit the target. In this case, I went with, and I have bought these options, I went with the 150 strike, and I looked out to that September expiration. Even though I know the market's going to turn a little shaky in July and August, I would rather have that time premium helping me and not forcing me into a corner in terms of selling that option before that 20 or 30-day period has played out. So I look at the September 150 calls on Nvidia, and you're going to see that they're a little expensive. Nonetheless, it gives you a vehicle to obviously leverage the move better than just buying and holding the stock. And if you like to stay away from the options, or you don't have the education, take a look at some of the leveraged ETFs that are out there. You can double up on your exposure, or 1.5 times the exposure to Nvidia by buying an ETF where somebody else does that leveraging for you. So let's sum it up very quickly for you. Nvidia just broke above that top Bollinger Band. In addition, you've got that 50-day crossing above that 200-day moving average, or a golden cross. That's going to help to give momentum to let this trade play out. A move up above that 155 tomorrow is really going to solidify that this trend is going to accelerate to the upside. It's what I call a volatility rally, because remember, we kind of got quiet, and this is what's helped us to have that Bollinger Band break. The stock has been trading sideways. Break above that 155 is going to get us up to 160 quickly, and you're going to see every analyst and every investor try to jump on this bull train before the earnings season kicks in. And remember, you've got 3 weeks or so, 4 weeks until Mag 7 companies start to report, even though Nvidia won't be one of them. That is going to give a lot of investors that time to really get a FOMO feeling going on and continue buying up to that 170 to 175 range. At that point, I think you've extended your stay. And keep in mind, right here, looks like the stock is starting to become a little bit overbought, so you might see some consolidation along the way. Nonetheless, 170 to 175 is that target. That's it for today. Chris Johnson, kind of a little bit of exciting, in my opinion, a little exciting signal on Nvidia, 36 times, and the results are pretty firmly in the bulls camp right now, as well as sentiment, as investors are looking to relax from what's been going on in the market and really start to add stocks to their portfolios. Check us out on moneymorning.com, and if you haven't seen it below, there is a link where you can get our 5 free 5-stock watch list. We give you a growth stock like Nvidia, a tech stock. We give you a dividend stock, a small stock under $10, and one bearish stock every week on Monday morning. It's well worth the look, especially since it's free. Hope you have a great day. Wish you the best trading success.